to kill you. I will, because I'm a Viking. Hear that? I'm a Viking!
Welcome to the big ticket interview for How to Train Your Dragon. I am Zuri Hall, joined now by the cast and director of the film. Thank you all for joining me.
No, thank you so much for having us.
So excited to talk about the film. I want to kick things off with you, Dean. 15 years ago, you made the original movie. What were your must-have rules to say yes and sign on to bringing this world to life via live action?
Well, I think we wanted to keep the best of what fans have come to love about that original movie and not try to replace it, but to give a different experience. So to lean into everything that live action could give us as a medium, make it more immersive, make the characters richer, more depth, and just really pull the audience into a grounded world that you believe with photoreal dragons.
Absolutely. Was there any way in which it was more challenging, obviously, being live action?
Many ways. Obviously, in animation, we can manipulate and control everything. And so from actors, doing what they want to the weather, we really had to kind of accommodate for all these changes. But the wonderful thing is then you get surprises that make the scenes better. And that's the magic of live action.
Absolutely. And a lot of that magic brought by the incredible cast, of course. Mason and Nico, I want to kick this one off with you two. Talk to me about getting the call, realizing that you were about to join this incredible world.
Oh my God. So sadly, there's a video of this where I look like an idiot.
Sadly?
I look like an idiot.
No, Mason, the video, when me and Mason first met and were hanging out, I remember him saying there's the video of me getting the part and it's really embarrassing. And I was like, I need to see this. And his mum showed me and it is now on the internet and it is maybe the sweetest thing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, it's adorable.
So's yours though.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, wait, let's get into Nico's moment.
No, I remember she was like, please send me the video of you getting the job. Yeah. And I was like, Nico, you can't show anybody. She's like, okay. And I sent it to her. She's like, by the way, I showed everybody.
I showed everyone I know.
Yeah.
I posted.
I was like, look who I'm working with.
Yeah, and then I was like, okay, so I need your video. She was like, nope.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And I was like, why? She was like, nope, not gonna happen. So.
What were the feelings behind those reactions? Like, what was that initial emotional reaction?
That was the best moment of my life. Wow. Like, those movies, the animated trilogy, are like, it's my childhood. I grew up on that, and never in a million years would I thought I could be a part of this franchise and a part of this world. And meeting Dean, when I got the audition, I was just so excited to meet Dean. Not in a million years would I've ever thought I could get this job. Yeah. So when I met Dean, I just was gushing about, how much, the movies mean to me. And, I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
I have to say, as a fellow actor watching both of you, actually, when they hear that they're getting the roles, I kind of put myself in your shoes, and I'm thinking, but to be that age and to get this news, that you're about to play Hiccup, I could so feel it myself, and that's why I think it was really pure and really beautiful to see that reaction, because I can't even, I just said I can imagine, I can't even imagine, but I can imagine.
You can't imagine. Everyone has their first moment, right? Do you remember? Did it take you back to your first, whoa, this is gonna move the needle moment?
And it was huge for me, but it was actually just a job in theater, but it's not even about this though, to land these roles in How to Train Your Dragon so early on. I was like, damn, that's kind of great.
Gerard, what did it take for you to revisit Stoick in live action? What was your first sort of feeling or reaction to stepping into his boots, his shoes, his world via live action?
Well, firstly, they had to talk me into it, because once I realized that these two did have the role, I didn't want to make it. No. The best experience that I've had working has been with Dean, even in the animated. We just had such a blast and we stayed friends, and it was very sad that when we finished the last animated movie and the last press tour. So for me, I thought it was done. But it was one thing I often say was when I used to make the animated movies, I would imagine having to be that size and really embody that character. And suddenly Dean says, hey, do you want to actually do that? But I hadn't thought about the reality of having to wear those costumes. You know, the first costume fitting, when they put everything on, I was like, oh God, I actually have to get to that size of the, and I kind of panicked because it was very, very heavy, and I had to start wearing weight vests to get used to it. But no,
wait, you're telling me there was weight training essentially?
Yeah, but like weight vests, because by the way, within about that first costume fitting took about an hour, and by the end I was like, get this off me.
Yeah.
My back is killing me. And then I thought, this is a massive movie and it's all going to fall apart because oh, Jerry can't wear the costume. So he can't do it. So everybody has to go home. But no, it was so exciting, because the other thing I'd often thought about is imagining yourself in that world. And with the animated movie, you're not in that world, right? You get to imagine that, but here we really got a chance to enter the world, wear the costume, live like a Viking, and be on those incredible sets. So that was a fun challenge, and I think you could revisit it, reimagine it, and make it better and even more emotional, and just take the audience on an even bigger journey than you'd been able to do so before.
Absolutely. And the beard game. Talk to me about what makes an amazing Viking beard. I mean, Dean got a pretty awesome
You really
do in real life. Like, I must give a moment of silence for
Dean's
beard.
the blueprint.
Dean is the blueprint. What was the key, Gerard? What made that for you?
Well, it's funny, looking over at Dean, it reminds me of that first day on set when everything hit me at the one time. I had a huge wig, I had a massive beard that it took hours to get on, and it was in 5 pieces. Plus I had the whole costume and this crazy helmet. And my first scene, I'm like, what is going on here? It just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. But no, wearing that beard, to rock the beard, you need to, have an amazing costume, and a costume designer, great makeup artist, great director, and great cast around you to feel like you're really owning it, and then you get used to touching it and stuff like that. Because the funny thing is, when a beard's fitted to you, you often go, oh, this is precious, I don't want to, but you're a Viking, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta, so make it like it's part of your everyday life, and you use it to express yourself, and you feel like you're a guy in that beard, in that helmet, and with that quite towering presence.
Yeah, incredible.
The funny thing is, it was freezing out. Everybody else was super cold, but he was always he was sweltering in his outfit.
I know you'd walk in and be like, oh, I'm so hot.
And we're all like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
They would apply the beard. He would come out of his trailer with the beard applied, have the whole costume on. He would stand around and sweat, and then the beard glue would start to come off. So we were constantly, there was more beard glue used on this movie than probably any film.
Oh my God, yeah. And by the end, especially because it took like an hour and a half to get everything off, because by the end of the day, they put on so much beard glue on my face, so they had to use these solvents to, kind of get it off and
like
scrub and
burning
scrub.
your skin.
And I was choking every day, so I ended up with this huge metal straw so that I could breathe. Oh yeah.
I didn't know this.
Oh yeah, I was actually struggling, and so I'd have this straw so that I was at least breathing less of the fumes from it. I felt so. I'd be looking at myself in the mirror going, okay, you look like a bit of an idiot right now, but that's okay. But yeah.
Thank you for the sacrifices you made to get this film to us. Man, you really went through it over here.
No, well, we all went through it. By the way, I didn't have to learn at this point how to ride a dragon.
We're going to talk about riding the dragons. Speaking of the dragons, Dean, you said you wanted them to feel as realistic as the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. Talk to me a little bit about the difference between the practical and the special effects. Where did you use what, and was there any effect in particular that really just blew you away?
It's a combination, really, because we spent quite a bit of time looking at the dragon designs from the animated movie and then working backward, almost as though the animated movie came after. If this was a caricature and a simplification of a dragon that existed for real, what would that dragon look like? And that became our mentality. So there was a lot of design work, working with the wizards at Frame Store, designing what our dragons would ultimately look like, and completely credible, photoreal. But then we needed to kind of break that down. So when the actors were on set, they needed an acting partner in the form of a dragon. So we had these amazing puppeteers led by Tom Wilton, and these incredible dragon puppets, these heads and bodies that we could bring onto set, so that they weren't just acting against a tennis ball on a pole. They actually had eyes to look into and a character who was giving them a performance to react to. And then at the end, when we had all of the flying scenes, we had to make that feel as believable as well. And we didn't just want people being moved around in their seats, as you've seen in maybe some other productions. We wanted them to feel like jockeys on horses. And so we built these giant gimbals that could move in 8 different axes. But on top of that, we had animatronic dragons with bodies and necks and heads that Mason, for example, when he's riding Toothless, would move with the movement of Toothless, whether he was rising or dipping or banking, and we had control over all of that to try to recreate the shots that we had carefully planned in pre-visualization. So it was really a complicated, but ultimately really effective end result.
Incredible. I mean, to piggyback on that, Mason, how did the live action version of Toothless just kind of exceed your wildest dreams? What was that like?
I mean, at first, I didn't really know what to expect. Like, I thought maybe it was just gonna be like a tennis ball.
Tennis ball.
But like he was saying, Tom and all of the puppeteering team were so incredible and so easy to work with. Most of the time, when it was just Hiccup and Toothless, it was a foam head with Tom behind it, and you know, I could tuck something and look at something, but the gimbal, it was like a giant mechanical bull. Like you felt everything. And I remember when we did test drive, they had giant speakers around me and they played the music when we were doing that scene, and that was such a special moment. I didn't really have to act. They kind of just put me in that world.
Beautiful.
And it was amazing. It was an experience.
You know, obviously that iconic moment when Toothless and Hiccup are together and they're becoming friends for the first time, and he rests his head in his palm. It's beautiful. What do you remember most about filming that moment?
That scene, that day on set, everybody just kind of had, I mean, that's such an iconic scene, and that scene has moved so many people, including me. And I was really nervous going into it, but you know, I have the incredible Dean here who's the one who made the iconic original film, and watching him walk me through the process of what the scene should be and how it should go. And we really wanted to keep that scene specifically very close to the original because how special it is. And you know, that scene, it felt awesome. It felt amazing.
And Hiccup and Astrid say, "Come what may." What does that say about these two as a team?
I've never worked on a production where everybody just clicked so fast, and it really just turned into a family, and we were all on this journey together. And God, it's still so surreal to me.
Yeah,
So.
I think it was really, I mean, like from when we did the we read that scene in our chemistry together, and I remember it just being such a like Mason is Hiccup. He was so perfect just from the beginning, and I remember kind of even doing that scene and those scenes, and it really was just a kind of, from so early on, it really has been a thing of like, we're so in this together. I just like couldn't ask for a more supportive actor to be alongside and to be kind of in this journey with. And so it really was all of our stuff together, and our scenes was just so kind of, it felt just like a further embodiment of what we already kind of had off screen. So it was really special.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without Nico. She is Astrid. And getting to do those scenes, especially the beginning scene where Astrid walks out and looks so cool. Like, I was not acting.
No.
She was walking towards. I was just, it was so cool.
He was just in awe.
Yeah. But no, it's been so awesome.
Yeah.
And she's incredible.
I think we were all blown away by Nico's performance. I'd seen her on The Last of Us, like many others, and she was so electrifying and mesmerizing in that short performance. And yet we cast a large net, you know, and we saw a whole bunch of potential Astrids. But I think Nico always just kept rising to the top because, for me anyway, she could deliver dialogue that was meant as a takedown to Hiccup. Quite harsh dialogue criticizing him, but she managed to do it in a way that wasn't mean-spirited. It always felt like a sports team captain, you know, trying to raise her fellow players up to her level. And it was that gave me great confidence in that sort of, it was the special sauce in the mix, because I knew Nico's version of Astrid had to travel kind of a greater range in terms of character depth, understanding who she was, what she wanted, you know, how hard she struggled to get to the position that she's in as being sort of the best of the young warriors, and then having to sacrifice that because she's come to believe in Hiccup and his view of what dragons and Vikings could be. So it's, I think we were so dazzled by that it really brings a lot to the relationship.
Yeah, and Nico, high praise and so deserved. To Dean's point, you know, Astrid's role is really expanded in the live action film. So what new layers from your perspective are you excited for audiences to see when it comes to Astrid?
I think it kind of, I mean, we spoke about it from really early on, but I feel like a reasoning as to why she doesn't like Hiccup. I think that kind of for some of the others, they kind of pick on him because he's, sorry Mason, a bit useless.
Oh.
So,
Appreciate it.
And so, but
After everything I just said about you.
I was like, she's amazing and like
Yeah,
he is
she's incredible.
completely
He is useless.
But I think because
not Mason.
Here you go.
Blurring the lines a little bit.
But I think that because of that, I think it was important to distinguish the fact that Astrid kind of looks down upon him because she resents the fact that he is given opportunities and has a kind of like special role and special place in Berk, despite the fact that like she works so hard and is doing so much. And I think that to have a drive like that of like needing to prove yourself constantly made everything so much easier, because just to have that as like a undertone for her then made it like the stunts, you know, training, everything felt way more worthwhile because there was a kind of narrative that I'm like really trying to get across, which was truly all Dean. I mean, we spoke about that from really early on, and I remember you kind of saying that that was something that you wanted to have be a through line, so that also when their relationship develops, you can see how big of a deal it is that she's kind of like coming to his side, and I think how much they lean on each other. Right. So yeah, I was really, really fortunate that we got to delve more into her, and she's a badass. It was
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is, because you are. Let's talk about those stunts for a second. You did a lot of your own. Talk to me about the 60-foot wire descent.
It was so scary.
What?
I remember when they told me about it, Roy, who's just like, oh my God, was so incredible. He was a head of stunts and stunt coordinator, and Yasmin Tate, who was my like brilliant, just, she is Astrid. She was my stunt double, and she just is incredible. And they told me about it, and they're like, well, we want you to do it. And I was like, of course I'll do it. Are you kidding? That sounds so much fun. And then I got there, and I saw, and they showed me Yaz doing it one time, and it was 60 feet is so much higher than it sounds. And I remember when they put me up there, and I just was like, I can't do this. And Roy was being like, there's only way down, there's only one way, so it's just this is what's gonna happen. But once we started doing it, it really was just like all of the stunt stuff. I think that the person that was doubting me the most was me, and I think that having you guys and the stunt team truly were just so brilliant, and they were so supportive, and they just were their kind of somewhat unfounded confidence in me and in the fact that I could do it made me be like, yeah, I can do it. And then afterwards sometimes Roy would be like, I don't know if you were gonna do that. And I'd be like, I thought you just said I could do it. And he was like, I mean, I don't know. But it was so fun, and getting to do all that stuff and learn how to wield an axe was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So hopefully skills that I'll take on in life somewhere.
Incredible. Oh, undoubtedly. And I can't wait to see where else you get to apply those new
fingers
skills.
Crossed.
So impressive. Mason and Gerard, talk to me a little bit about your performances with one another. What about each other's performance helped you when it came to really cultivating that father-son dynamic?
I've never worked with an actor like Gerard in my life, and it was so incredible watching him work and how he gets into character, and as Stoick. I mean, his presence he brings and the energy he brings to set, it's like no other. Like he walks on the set and everybody's kind of like, oh, that's Stoick, you know, and just getting to do those scenes with him, it was like taking a master class, and especially one of the scenes where Stoick comes back and he finds out, you know, Hiccup's been doing really well at, you know, the Trial of Flame, and it's a really funny scene, but at the same time, like that's something we really wanted to play into. Is sure you can get some laughs, but really how sad it is. Yeah. You know, they're sitting so close together, but the distance between them as father and son, it was really fun to play with you.
Even as written, was always a great relationship, but having the chance to work in live action, face to face with this man who was phenomenal, and that was one of the things. I could come in with that big energy, I had a big costume, and you were kind of the opposite. They give you a very kind of basic costume, so I'm 3 times the size of him, and making the most of all that. And I just thought that he harnessed his attributes so beautifully, both in the comedy and in what his heart's really saying, and especially the comedy towards it. After having played the real heart of the scene, you know, I remember that moment at the end of that scene that you're talking about when we're trying to talk to each other, and just the comedy timing between the two of us. But it was great to be able to kind of pull out as many colors as we could, you know, as we were working together. And I have to say, I was overjoyed working with him, because he's so talented, and it was great. And now see him, and you know, I just said it to him today, when I saw him in the movie, I was like, damn, this kid's so good. So it's lovely to see that person get offered the role, and then to see them in the finished product and go, wow. I mean, I love it, because again, I imagine it almost as me going through that journey, but it was really a joy working with him, and he gave me so much to work with, and I felt it as I was there. I was really being the father to him, with all its frustrations and all its joys and everything in between, you know?
And I got to be in the scene with actual Stoick.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. Like, that's insane to me. Oh, yeah, so crazy.
I think from my perspective, what was especially fascinating and educational was seeing how a scene like that developed, where Mason was a bit starstruck when Jerry arrived. I mean, Jerry just has an illustrious career, and he's such an accomplished actor. I think Mason was a bit timid in terms of exchanging, you know, within the scene, and it was great, because Jerry just kept giving license to, come on, push back on me, demand more of me, you know, pull out a performance, and it became this push and pull, and it was wonderful, because that's what the whole father-son relationship is about. It's just, you know, it's a push and pull between love and expectation, and you've got these two actors that were making one another better in the scene and making the scene come to life simply by pushing at one another and giving one another permission to push back. It was a wonderful thing to watch, having done this for the first time, and sort of sitting back behind the camera and watching that electricity develop between actors.
Beautiful. So
That's my boy.
Have you gotten
Love you,
Jerry
Dad.
level? Are we calling him Jerry now, like Dean? Or are we still Gerard?
What do you call me?
I call you Jerry.
Yeah,
I call
Yeah,
you
okay, we're Jerry level.
Or
there
Dad.
we go.
Yeah,
Love
or
that
Dad,
solution
yeah.
of a
Call him
friendship.
Yeah, you can calm down with the dad, Jerry.
Jerry works. Dean, explain what Berk looks like in this version of the film. Talk to me a little bit about the details.
One of the things we did at the very beginning was jump into a helicopter and fly around. We flew around Iceland, we flew around parts of Scotland, and then we went to the Faroe Islands, which sit right between Iceland and Scotland, and we found our Berk while we were in the Faroe Islands. We saw an island that was so magnificent and bizarre and exotic looking, but in a really rough, sort of roughly hewn Nordic way, that became the photo reference for this world. And then we started designing and building our village and kind of making it feel as though it was really subject to some nasty weather, but it's also the coming together of all of these different cultures. So we wanted to expand the mythology, and part of that was this idea that dragons have been a problem everywhere. And so the Vikings, who had sailed far and wide, gathered the best dragon fighting warriors from everywhere. And so you'd have influences from the Far East, from the Silk Road, from the Slavic region, from Spain and North Africa, and they all sort of coming together under the Viking banner to create this outpost where they're there to try to take down one of the biggest dragon nests that they know of. Only they can't find it. And so they're generations in, but you still have the influences in the artwork, in the tapestries, in the carvings, in the costuming of these different cultures that have melded together.
And these flying scenes are really like something out of Top Gun Maverick. Like they're next level.
Better
than Top Gun Maverick. What was the key to filming an incredible flying dragon scene in IMAX, no less?
I think what we learned from the first How to Train Your Dragon movie is that the audiences really dug in when we had flying scenes, and we knew that. So we wanted to expand and make them more immersive and visceral and kinetic without adding fat back onto what was a pretty streamlined story. And so it was a lot of sort of carefully looking at how we filmed it, almost as though the cameraman couldn't keep up with the subject, so as dragons were flying through, whether it's Astrid riding on her natter or Hiccup riding on his Night Fury, it's the idea that they're so fast and they're so dynamic, and that you, the audience, are either right there with them in the saddle, or you're trying to keep up with them. And that just kind of made it, I think it made it much more exciting and visceral, especially when you add all of the live action bells and whistles of making it feel photoreal so that it could exist. And flying a dragon is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. Mason, Nico, what was it like riding a dragon together for the first time?
It was insane. I mean,
It's crazy.
normally when I'm like on the dragon, it's fun, but whenever it's both of us on the dragon, it was really uncomfortable.
We would
really
also, we'd be
uncomfortable.
up there for a really long.
Nothing under your face when he said that.
I'm just so jealous. I'm imagining the two of them on the dragon.
it was-
The second one, you have like the coolest dragon.
Yeah, true.
Yes,
Yeah.
but now I got to get, because these guys, not to jump in, but they put in a lot of training,
Yeah.
like Dean said, to make that stuff so real. And you really see it in the movie. They're watching them under the dragon is incredible. But anyway, carry on.
There was one rig they had us where it spun around. That
It was like
so
the
funny.
360 rig.
It was
And
awesome.
so it was just like circles.
Yeah, and the camera was like right here, and we're spinning, and it was just, "Doo, there's Mason and Nico, doo, Mason and Nico."
And they would be like, okay, we're gonna go a bit faster on this one. But so initially we were like, not too fast, please. And then what we realized slowly is that actually, if you go slower, when you get to the bottom and you're just like completely hanging upside down, it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah. You're like,
and so
let's
then we were like,
speed
quicker.
It made the scene because we look so uncomfortable.
Yeah, we're having
It's
a terrible
so funny.
day. But I mean, I think despite discomfort, it was actually really. I mean, I remember when we
I had
did
a great
like
time. Other than that,
what for the like first time where we're flying together and kind of after all of the chaos. I remember when like all of the lights were like pink and purple,
yeah,
and it was really
yeah.
gorgeous, and they played the song, and I remember just being like, this is just. It really, despite the fact that it's there isn't a dragon and we're surrounded by kind of blue and green screen, it really does kind of makes it so much easier to just immerse yourself into it, and it.
and they had the
feel-
music playing for Romantic Flight
Yeah,
too.
and it felt really.
It was nice.
It was really cool.
That's awesome. Which scene were each of you most excited to recreate in live action?
I feel like the obvious answer is Test Drive. I was really excited for that, but also the arena scene, because there's just so much depth to that scene and so much going on, and the.
Do you mean the Monstrous Nightmare fight?
Yes,
That one,
yeah. For when Hiccup knows he's about to let his dad down, and Astrid comes and they have that moment together that's so special, and he shows the village that after his whole life trying to be one of them and wanting to make his dad proud, that he finally accepts that he's different and that's okay, and that was a fun scene.
The scene that I loved that I didn't know I was going to love was the scene when I'm first talking, when I'm presenting to everybody in the Great Hall. And not that I'm a big fan of making speeches all the time, but that turned out to be so much fun, the way it was written, and having and having hundreds of Vikings in there. But I'm not just saying this, my favorite scenes were definitely with this man, because they were the scenes with the heart in the story, this father-son element, and that's like theater when you're in there, and yet with these incredible backdrops and these sets, and you're in your costumes, but yet you're playing this Viking chieftain and his son, everything that everybody knows about that story, and you're creating it. Like Dean says, we're working those scenes and finding the magic, and I was looking forward to those scenes, but they without a doubt turned out to be my favorite scenes.
That scene was so fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
Beautiful. And Nico?
Selfishly, I think walking out in the beginning, I was like, I'm excited to film that.
I love it.
I was like, I want to film that. But I think other than that, an actual kind of scene that I was really excited for and kind of anticipating from really early on was the scene at the cliff's edge that we did in the chem read, I think.
Yeah.
Just because I remember us we spoke about that so much after the fact, and it was kind of later on in the shoot, and by the time that we actually got there, I just remember being like, it just was crazy, because it was like, felt very much like the kind of beginning of the whole journey of being part of this film for me, and then to that be kind of near the end just felt like a really cathartic way to bring it to a close. So probably that one.
And Dean, collaborating again with John Powell for the music on this film. Talk to me a little bit about what that adds to something like this.
He was the first phone call I made when after speaking to Universal about kicking the tires on this idea. John is one of those rare composers who is as much a storyteller as he is gifted with music. And I think the lens through which he interprets the story adds so much more depth to it, because we're sort of dealing with dialogue and acting on the surface, and he looks for a way to support it with a harmony that is giving you subtext that might not otherwise be there. So sometimes in moments where you think, oh, the music's going to be exciting and full of action and intense, he might play it tearful and sad and full of longing because it's the collapse of a relationship. And I just love that sort of thing. I always feel like we do everything we can to get the movie halfway there. And then we hand it to a composer and let them take it the rest of the way, because what they do with music transcends dialogue, and it goes right to the heart. And if you have those two things working in concert together, you can have something that will stand the test of time, because it has a built-in wonder and emotion that is really hard to will into existence.
Wow. Beautifully said. I could talk to y'all all day about this, but I gotta wrap it up. Thank you all so much for your time. Congratulations on the film. We're so excited to watch. Thank you all for watching. That's it for us today. Tickets for How to Train Your Dragon are available right now at Fandango. I'm Zuri Hall. I'll see you next time.